How you guys doing? It's Juan Orta here, also known as Captain Hooks, and here are 5 essential things that you need to keep in mind if you're new to fishing or if you're just getting back into the game. Let's go. All right, so first things first, guys, you're gonna want to know your regulations. All right, so depending on where you are, and what I mean by where you are, I mean by where are you in the United States, right? So depending on the time of year and location in the United States, there may be some fish or areas of waters that may be off to fishing. So you just got to keep those things, in mind, because the fishing laws, they vary by location, and ignorance is not an excuse. All right. So you have things as far as how many fish you can get, the size limits. Sometimes fish are not allowed to be caught during a certain time or months, right? Like you have bass when they're doing their spawn cycle, right? They're not allowed to be fished. And here in PA, you're not even allowed to fish at a bedded fish. You're not even allowed to pitch at one, right? So these are different things that you have to keep in mind. Also, restricted areas, and all these things are just a part of responsible fishing, right? So this knowledge not only helps create better conservation efforts that are already put in place for the fish, but it also avoids hefty fines and penalties in the long run if you ever get pulled over by the wilderness police. All right, now the next thing you're gonna want to do, this is especially for the new guys that are going out there, and as well as those guys kind of getting back into the mix, like I mentioned before. You're going to want to understand fish behavior, right? So you're going to want to have a better idea of the particular fish that you're targeting. I'm not going to go out and use the same setup or things that I use to catch bluegill as I do to catch catfish. And I'm not going to use those same techniques that I use to catch catfish to catch bass, right? And so understanding what the fish that I'm after is doing at any particular time of the year will definitely help me better target those fish, especially during those bluegill spawns over the summer months. They tend to spawn once a month. So being able to find those beds, understanding those behaviors will better help, find the bigger fish, right? If I'm looking for bigger bass, those bigger bass may be schooled up further around those bedded areas as ambush points. So understanding these things will really help you, because fish are not always where you expect them to be. There's a lot of factors that have to be put in play: water temperature, weather conditions, the time of day, and the seasonal effects that come with just the changing of the seasons, right? The feeding patterns and the movements as well of the fish. So all these little nuances are going to help you target and make better educated decisions when out on the water. All right, now here's another one that I know, like for me, this was a kind of a cool thing when I got into fishing, but mastering the knots, right? And you don't need to know all the knots. Like there's plenty of different knots out there, but you're gonna want to try to figure out, certain knots that you're comfortable with. You know what I mean? No matter your skill level, losing a fish to a poorly tied knot, it's ridiculously frustrating. So, the right knot can make a difference between landing a fish and losing a fish. So, learning new knots, learning knots that are quicker for you to tie in certain situations. Sometimes you may want more action on your bait that you're using, so you may want to use something like a loop knot, which provides that more action, right? So understanding these little nuances could definitely help you out on the water. So make sure you have at least three. One that I suggest is the Polymer, the improved clinch knot, and my favorite, the San Diego jam knot. Number 4, it's going to be line care and the importance of line care, right? So depending on what kind of line you're running, if you're running a braid to a mono, or a braid to fluorocarbon leader, or if you're running all monofilament, or if you're running all fluorocarbon, all those different lines have their tendencies, right? I know monofilament has a lot of memory. So, you keep that in the back of your truck or your car for a long period of time and you don't use it for a while. that heat and that expansion from it warming and cooling over the hot days and the cool nights, that's going to create a bit of memory on that line. So you're going to want to at times essentially, maybe tie up to something and pull some line out of your reel and get yourself reeled back up in a nice, neat format, just because of that heat expansion. Check your if you do leaders, going from a braided line to a leader line, make sure you're keeping your knots in check. I like to do like a 20-foot leader at times, just because I change out a lot of lures so I could have a lot of space to cut my lures. But the more I do that, the more I run into a friction zone where my knot is really going to be going through those guides at a much more violent rate, right? So just keeping those things in mind. Another good trick to do is periodically take a Q-tip and go through the eyelets of go through your rod and go through all the eyelets. And if you do that, that will help you kind of like determine, do I have any frays within my eyelets? Are any of these eyelets causing abrasion, weak points? Also, you catch a real good fish, and especially a real wild fish, they're gonna have sharper teeth under there, and they could cause abrasion on the line, especially if you're cranking against some rocks or some brush piles and things like that. So keep that stuff in mind, because I've lost plenty of lures just making sure, just not ensuring that my line was how it needed to be, and I just cast it and it was just straight pop right off. So make sure you keep your line care pretty tight and situated. And then lastly, gear isn't everything. You don't need to stress yourself out over having top-notch expensive gear, right? The gear is not, the gear helps you catch the fish, but you catch the fish. It's like somebody says, oh, hey, that's a nice shirt. Well, it's not the shirt, it's the model. Same thing, it's the person utilizing the product, right? So, and I've seen it. I've seen plenty of guys with all the right equipment get outfished by the ugly stick guys in tin can boats, right? So I strongly suggest just, an ugly stick. Go get yourself an ugly stick. Go get yourself a traditional spin rod. Go get yourself a basic ugly stick combo for the baitcaster. The Abu Garcia is a great entry level. Go to your Bass Pro or your Cabela's. They have a lot of great entry level combos, usually for anywhere between I wouldn't say 80 to the highest end being 140. But nonetheless, there's reels that the reels alone, just the reels, are upwards 200. You have rods that are 150, 160, 200 or better, right? So don't feel compelled to feel like, okay, that's the kind of stuff I need because that's going to make the difference. That's not going to make the difference. What's going to make the difference is understanding all the little nuances. When you get your rod, look for the rod description. There's going to be an area on the rod where it's going to give you information on the rod. It's going to give you things like the line type. It's going to give you an overview. It'll tell you anywhere between 10 pounds to 15 pounds. And it'll let you know that that's the most ideal line weight to use with that rod and that setup. So you utilize these pieces of information. It'll also give you a weight zone, right? Something where it might be as high as 1 ounce down to 1/8 of an ounce, right? And so that rod is letting you know it performs best within this range. So make sure that the lures and the line and all these things are working together. And then lastly, man, just get out there and learn. Get out there and figure it out. Because like I said, having the best gear is not going to let you get on the fish, right? It does feel good when you graduate and you get to a point where you're not buying a combo that's already put together and you build your own combo. That stuff is cool. I guarantee, man, if you just, go out there, a lot of the stuff I brought was like ridiculously cheap. Like the first stuff I got from Marketplace was like $20. $20 rods, $25 rods, hand-me-downs essentially, from people off of Facebook. And I learned how to use those till I either broke them or whatever the case was. But the whole point is I ran those pieces of gear through the ringer, and I really learned how to work through that. I had got knots and my line caught up all over the place and had to take it apart and put it back together to really, and so all those little things will really help you. And the cheaper the rod in some aspects for that, almost the better, because that's going to help you kind of, in my opinion. I'm not talking like the worst thing in the world where you throw it and it's going to immediately, blow to pieces, but get yourself a decently economically friendly rod with a slight bit of reputableness behind it, so that you can have a little bit of durability like Ugly Stik, and just get out there and put it through its paces. And I promise you, through that trial and that error, you will figure it out. So yeah, I mean, that's my guide for you guys. Those are the 5 things that I think are super essential. Going over those one more time real quick. It's just knowing your regulations, understanding your fish behavior, mastering knot tying, maintaining your line, and lastly, just understanding that gear isn't everything. You don't need the most expensive stuff to be successful, and though the high quality gear can help, what truly matters is how well you know your equipment and your environment. Spend more time mastering your technique and learning fish behavior, then upgrade your equipment. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. I hope that you enjoy yourself out there on the water. Be sure to come check out the conversation over at Kayak Fishing Dads. Also, big shout out to the Bearded Dad Fishing for allowing me to co-host the Yak Chat with him. Make sure you follow that and come check out those episodes. They're really fun and they're super interactive. And lastly, big shout out to Wife Calling Me Home LLC, which is a guide service out of Harrisburg, PA. So if you want to get on the Susky and try to figure out a little bit of how those fish are working out, you can check him out there. And he is also working on getting his licensing for South Carolina, or the Carolinas, Myrtle Beach area. A lot of cool opportunities to catch potential redfin and gar, river bass down there and other cool stuff. So really excited to be connected with him, because I have folks that live in South Carolina as well. And so that's kind of nice, us having that connection, up here in PA as well as down south. So being able to connect with him in the future and being able to get experience in both river systems in 2 great parts of the United States is something I really look forward to. Also, big shout out to Humble Imprints. They pretty much solve all your problems as far as everything is concerned. If you need to get something embroidered, you got a family reunion, you got a team jersey, even if you want promotional gear, cups, logos on hats, keychains, whatnot, hit up Humble Imprints, and 10% of those proceeds go towards foster children, so be sure to check that out. And then lastly, the Puerto Rican Sport Fishing Federation, which offers amazing opportunities to anglers to travel all over the world and be on the biggest stages possible, rubbing shoulders with the best anglers all over the world. So thank you to them for allowing me to partake in their family and being an ambassador, and just kind of, doing their thing with them. So yeah, we're out of here, and we'll talk to y'all soon. God bless, grace and peace.
Splish splash.